I'm joined now by Andy Lester, the Head of Conservation at A Rocha UK. Andy, we're talking the week after the COP30 climate summit ended, and it ended in compromise with some steps forward, particularly when it comes to financing for nations already struggling with the impact of climate change, but also with concerns being raised by many that fossil fuels weren't actually mentioned in the final deal, let alone having a binding agreement on how to transition away from them. Is it fair to say that this COP summit was always going to be a compromise?
So the route of COP all the way through from the beginning of the process to today has always been one of compromise, discussion, debate, dialogue, and in some cases heated arguments between different nation states and different vested interests. So was there an expectation that this would somehow be the big breakthrough summit where Saudi Arabia and some of the other fossil fuel producing nations capitulated and said, we need to move rapidly away? No, the expectations, I think, were met in that it was yet another COP of dialogue, discussion and compromise. Some compromise is good and some compromise is clearly not so good.
We've gone to having COP climate summits annually, whereas there used to be, I think, was it every 5 years? Has that had an impact, do you think? Has it increased and improved decisions made by various countries between the COPs?
I think the danger of annual COPs is that it can heighten expectations. The sort of feeling that because there's an annual gathering of the nations should be coming to rapid conclusions and being able to drive forwards a very ambitious agenda. In reality, the steps taken forwards are likely to be slower if you meet as nation states every year. And there are certainly questions in a number of minds of whether there is merit in meeting every year. And certainly one of the ideas that's been vested is that you have every 2 to 3 years a much bigger COP, and in between you have smaller side events that keep the dialogue, discussion, debates, progress going. So it'll be interesting to see where they decide to take it from here, whether they continue with big events every year or whether they have a sort of every 3 years a really big event that all the countries go to and something smaller in between. We'll wait and see what happens with that.
Andy, some were dubbing this the People's COP, the Indigenous People's COP. It was on the edge of the rainforest. There was a lot of input or presence, at any rate, from people from indigenous groups in Brazil. Do you think that has maybe changed the public perception around climate change and who it's actually impacting?
So I was talking to a climate scientist the other day, and the largely held view is that if you are somebody who believes climate change is happening, you continue to believe climate change is happening, and you just feel that slightly a bit more desperate. For those who are completely not committed to it, no matter how heart-wrenching some of the stories, it probably won't shift the goalposts very much. However, hearing indigenous voices, the voices from the rainforest, and those voices did get heard and did get aired, and sometimes it was in the form of protests, but often it was in the form of dialogue that got unreported. Yes, it's a relief to see that indigenous voices are being listened to, even if the results don't meet the requirements and the requests. And that was the same for the island nations as well. Many of the island nations were voicing their fears and anxieties very loudly. They are in the front line of the effects of climate change and are very worried about disappearing. So understandably, the more marginalised the community, the more frightened and alarmed they are by the level of change that we are seeing.
Is there somewhere where, when it works well, the church can actually play a part? Because we can, at our best, can't we, actually bring people together of completely opposing views for that mutually beneficial dialogue?
Absolutely. And I've just got back, Dave, from a 4-day retreat or 3 full-day retreat in Northampton, where we had over 50 delegates from a range of 9 different church denominations and 11 other major conference centres and outdoor band centres, amongst others, who were meeting together to dialogue about change, how to manage their land for community, for nature, for climate resilience, and for Jesus. And that's great. It's really exciting to see. And it's from a 1 acre site retreat centre to a 10,500 acre estate in Bedford and everything in between. To get those sorts of people together to talk and to pray and to dialogue gives us hope. If we are different and we're talking, that is the best that we can do as a church community. And we see that across many, many organisations doing similar actions, whether it's Eco Church here at A Rocha or some of the work of Tear Fund and Christian Aid. It's exciting to see Christian organisations stepping up to the plate and really making a difference. But Dave, one other thing that really gives me hope is there's a lot of dialogue about China not being present at the summit in Brazil. There were over 300 Chinese delegates there. And behind the scenes, I understand that they were doing lots of deals on solar and wind and hydro, and really pushing a fossil fuel-free future through business. And you sit there and think, this is very interesting. There's been a lot of criticism of China, and yet they are, in many ways, pushing on a fossil fuel-free future. And it may come sooner than we think if some of the big players are quietly driving the agenda behind the scenes. So I think all is not lost.
Just finally then, Andy, is the other major distinctive that Christians bring to this whole discussion that we approach, or should approach, issues like this not from a place of fear, but from a place of actually knowing the one who created this universe?
100%. And think about what an amazing tool of witness this is. I was out at a sports event last night and face to face with the coach afterwards, who's not a Christian. And we were talking about climate and poverty and nature restoration and how the church can take a lead. And she turned around and said, well, that's the very reason why I've been put off the church, because I don't see you taking a lead on the issues that matter to me personally. So I've gone in a different direction. And I'm thinking if we can have those conversations going all over the place, thousands of churches dialoguing with our community and saying, we believe in this. We believe we can make a difference. We believe Jesus is at the heart of change, and you can be too. Think of what a revival tool this could be for our nation.
Andy Lester from A Rocha UK, thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure, Dave.